Hi, everyone. First of all, on behalf of all of us at Free the Oregon Zoo Elephants, thank you for tuning in and showing up for Chendra. This is a really cool and innovative way for us to come together far and wide to give her a voice. And this is the first time we're doing anything like this, and it really means the world to us and to Chendra that you're all here and giving her a couple of hours of your time. So for those that don't know me, I'm Dani. I manage the social media for Free the Oregon Zoo Elephants here in Portland, Oregon. And if you're wondering who we are, well, for those that are new, we're a small group of people that care a whole lot about elephants. Elephants are an incredible species. There's some facts that you may or may not know, like elephants are the most matriarchal animal next to us humans. They form really close bonded herds filled with generations of females. These strong herds stick together to raise children, to protect each other, and to protect the earth. Did you know that when an elephant eats the food that Mother Nature provides to them in the trees and the forests, they replant everything they've eaten when they poop? You literally see plants growing from elephant poop. I know, I've seen it with my own eyes. It's pretty incredible. So elephants are really essential to Mother Nature and to keeping our forests alive and healthy. And of course, that is within their native regions around the world, of which we should note that North America is not one of them. But did you know that when an elephant in a herd dies, the entire herd will gather around the deceased and have a ritual, sometimes standing and paying respects for hours until moving on? How sweet is that? And it's shocking how close we are to elephants. That's why it's equally shocking how detrimental captivity can be for them. With the shelter in place currently going on everywhere, we find the restrictions in our own freedom to be unbearable. You know, we're longing for when we will be free again. Now, imagine if we're never allowed outside of our shelter. Take all the things around you that you picked out and that you love away, left with just the walls and basic furniture. What would that feel like? You know, would we even survive? Would we go crazy? Well, they wonder if they'll survive too. Where once out in the wild, they would walk and forage for hours and hours, 15 or more elephants, you know, on a mission, in their home, free to eat whatever they want, free to be a family, live their lives, be happy. Now they're trapped. There's no trees within reach, no soil to lounge in or play in, no natural river to bathe and delight in, screaming children, glass, broken bones, insufficient diet. I mean, the list goes on. And this is captivity. So can you imagine being taken from a tropical, lush home to a cold, small, and concrete enclosure? It's prison. Where you're the only one of your kind, where you get beaten with sharp hooks and forced to do tricks. I know that this sounds gruesome, and I wish that it weren't true, but for Chendra, that's her reality. Chendra was shipped to the Oregon Zoo when she was barely 5 years old from Malaysia. The story is that deforestation from the palm oil industry wreaked havoc on her home. She lost her family, she lost an eye, and that day, she lost her freedom. She was shipped to an ecosystem not suitable for her. She is the only Borneo pygmy elephant in North America. Chendra's been suffering at the Oregon Zoo for over 25 years. And while the zoo is no longer supposed to use the cruel bull hooks they are so famous for, Chendra has enough wounds inflicted on her to last a lifetime. Chendra is currently standing on fractured toes, which allow infections in. Imagine the pain of walking on broken bones. Chendra exhibits profound stereotypical behavior caused from extreme stress. These behaviors that can be seen in any captive animal include swaying, walking back and forth, walking in circles, and head bobbing. If you've been following us for a while, you have seen Chendra do these in every video that we post. So why are we working to retire Chendra? Well, Courtney Scott joined up with a small group of animal advocates and started FOZE, Free the Oregon Zoo Elephants, over 10 years ago to give voice to Packy. the oldest lived captive elephant, born and bred by the Oregon Zoo. He was a Spitfire his whole life, never afraid to show his rebellious side and making it known that he was not happy, just like the rest of them. Packy was euthanized by the zoo before they would agree to send him to sanctuary. We're working so that the same doesn't happen to Chendra. She's at a pivotal point in her life. She has suffered a miscarriage and tuberculosis all within a year. She has suffered enough. And it's time for her to go back to walking in the trees and bathing in natural waters and having some peace and quiet. It's time for her to be an elephant again. Today, we're here to rally for Chendra. We'll hear from leading experts in the field of elephant behavior, care, and awareness, including activist Alyne Fortgang and doctor in animal behavior and best-selling author Jonathan Balcombe, and of course, our very special guest, Carol Buckley, CEO of Elephant Aid International, will be speaking and giving us a tour of Elephant Refuge North America, the refuge awaiting Chendra's arrival. The goal of this event is to be very interactive, so we encourage you to ask questions and comment as the speakers present. So don't forget to share the event page and the videos as we broadcast them. Let your friends know what we're up to and invite them to join. Following the rally at 2 p.m., we will be rounding out this incredible day with a free watch party of the film From Suffering to Satori by our very own founder, Courtney Scott, who will be joining us live to answer your questions during the film. Another easy and important way to get involved is to take part in our fun photo video challenge and giveaway. Check out our pinned post right here in the event page for details. And of course, don't forget to call and email the zoo and Metro, letting them know that people all over the world want Chendra to be retired. Those details are in the description of this event page, and there's even a script and email written out and ready if you want to copy and paste. Or of course, we encourage you to use your own words. Also, bear with us. This is our first virtual rally. There might be some glitches, some dead air. Just bear with us. Keep refreshing your page. Turn on your notifications. It's going to be really, really great. Thank you all again for joining us and for giving voice to Chendra. I am absolutely honored to announce our first speaker, Alyne Fortgang. She is the co-founder of Friends of Woodland Park Zoo Elephants. She and her team successfully got the elephant exhibit shut down in Seattle. It's a real treat. You're not going to want to miss it. So tune in, and we will see you soon. Thank you so much, and enjoy.
Hi, I'm Alyne Fortgang, co-founder of Friends of Woodland Park Zoo Elephants in Seattle. I led the effort to get our elephants retired out of the zoo and into FOZE Sanctuary in California. We were successful in getting the elephant exhibit closed, and this put an end to Woodland Park Zoo's plan to expand their breeding program. So that was a good thing. But for Bamboo and Chai, it was a tragedy. Woodland Park Zoo is quite a mouthful, so from time to time I'll call it WPZ. When our campaign started in 2006, there were 4 elephants: Chai, Chai's daughter Hansa, Bamboo, and Watoto. Let me tell you their tragic stories, which is all too familiar about elephants who suffer physically and psychologically day after monotonous day in zoo cages. Chai was taken from her mother and shipped to Seattle when she was about a year old. She was a gift from the Thai Airlines to promote their new route. As you know, elephant mothers never leave their daughters, and daughters never leave their mothers. They stay together for life. Chai was the only female at our zoo who was eligible for breeding, so when she was 19, she was trucked to Dickerson Park Zoo in Missouri to mate with a bull. WBZ sent her there, even though they acknowledged in a memo, which we have, that she could bring back the herpes virus with her from Dickerson Park Zoo because that zoo had already had a baby die from the disease. When Chai arrived at Dickerson Park Zoo, she was beaten for up to 2 hours so that the new keepers felt that would have her obey their new rules. The USDA imposed the maximum fine on Dickerson Park Zoo for violating the Animal Welfare Act, but Woodland Park Zoo justified the beatings. Chai did get pregnant, and then when back in Seattle, she had Hansa. When Hansa was about 5 years old, WPZ started in on inseminating Chai. She endured this highly invasive and painful procedure 112 times. When Woodland Park Zoo closed their elephant exhibit, Chai, along with Bamboo, were sent to the Oklahoma City Zoo. She died soon after getting there from emaciation, which is starvation, and a blood infection. Both, we believe, could have been prevented. My only consolation is that now she is free. In fact, that is my consolation when any elephant in a zoo dies. She is free from the misery of incarceration and being denied everything that is important to an elephant. On to Hansa. When Hansa was born, one of the keepers called her a cash cow. That's because her birth caused WPZ's attendance to double. When still a baby, a keeper who thought Hansa was doing something he wasn't approving of hit her with a bullhook. The public was enraged. But WPZ's director defended the abuse as appropriate and within guidelines. But WPZ's gamble of sending Chai to Dickerson Park Zoo, even though a baby had died of the herpes virus, this gamble failed. Chai did bring back the herpes virus, and Hansa died of it when she was only 6 years old. While Woodland Park Zoo said Hansa died peacefully in her sleep, we know that's not true. Hansa would have been in excruciating pain. Her necropsy showed that some of her major organs had hemorrhaged, and she died in a pool of diarrhea. Watoto. Watoto was the only African elephant at Woodland Park Zoo. After she was taken from her mother at about 1 or 2 years old, she would never set eyes on another African elephant ever again. Watoto and Bamboo were incompatible, which meant one of them was always in solitary confinement, and usually it was Watoto. Alone in a barren barn cell for 16 to 18 hours a day, she would pace in endless circles or rock back and forth in front of the door that would eventually let her out. Outside, the elephants would have a small section of a 1-acre yard that was divided into 5 pens. One day when Watoto was put in the elephant restraining device, one of her tusks got caught in the bars, and about 10 minutes later, it fell out. She went through the last 4 years of her life with only 1 tusk. Watoto suffered from severe arthritis caused by the zoo environment she was forced to live in. When the zookeepers arrived at 7 a.m. in the morning on August 22nd, 2014, they found her down on the ground. She was so debilitated by arthritis, she was unable to get herself up. Woodland Park Zoo allowed her to continue to suffer on the ground for another 4 hours before they euthanized her. The zoo never gave her a chance to survive by calling in the fire department with a crane to lift her. In fact, it was reported that the Seattle City Attorney's Office considered animal abuse charges against Woodland Park Zoo. Watoto died at only 45 years old. In the wild, she would have been at the prime of her life and probably still bearing calves. Bamboo. Bamboo is the last surviving elephant. She's still alive at the Oklahoma City Zoo, but barely. She's 54 and her health is declining rapidly. Bamboo was a 1-year-old baby when she was torn from her mother by Woodland Park Zoo. She was crated up and shipped to Seattle, where she spent almost all of her life. She lived through an abusive period when in 1986, Woodland Park Zoo hired a circus trainer who beat the elephants as a form of management. After Bamboo exhibited aggressive behaviors towards baby Hansa, and with the ongoing incompatibility with Watoto, Woodland Park Zoo decided to ship her off to Tacoma's Point Defiance Zoo. But after 9 months of her being in distress, they brought her back to Woodland Park Zoo instead of retiring her to a sanctuary. Anyway, at the Oklahoma City Zoo, Bamboo had been bullied by the other elephants. At one time, when one was chasing her, and with no space to get away, the elephant bit off 2 inches of her tail. Bamboo's lifelong misery is expressed by her repetitive behaviors of pacing in circle while swiveling her head. This is the manifestation of her trauma, of her distress, and of crushing boredom caused by such an unnatural existence living in zoo cages. All the elephants in zoos have tragic stories like these stories, and that's what motivates us. Why do we fight so hard in Seattle? For the very same reasons you are fighting so hard and why you will never quit. We care about these tortured souls, and we have science on our side. Scientific American did a meta-review of studies of elephants, and they concluded this, and I quote, "Confined elephants often spend their time standing around in cramped quarters. These torturous conditions inflict serious physical and psychological damage on such smart and sensitive animals. Captive breeding programs should be terminated. If the zoos really had the if zoos really had the animals' best interest at heart, they would close their elephant exhibits." And the public is getting it too. Here in Seattle, we've been tracking gate attendance and membership to Woodland Park Zoo for over 10 years. The graph I'm about to show you is from 2007 to 2017, but gate attendance also went down in 2018 in relation to our population boom. Woodland Park Zoo seems resistant to give us 2019 figures, but we'll get them. Anyway, here's the graph. As you can see, the red line is Woodland Park Zoo's, the downward trend of Woodland Park Zoo's gate attendance. In green is Woodland Park Zoo's, in green is Seattle's population boom, and in blue is King County's population boom. Now, membership to Woodland Park Zoo has also gone down as our population has grown so fast in this region. This decline, by the way, has included many years when the elephants were still here in Seattle. So, why do we think this downward trend is happening? Because attitudes are changing as the public is gaining awareness. The Seattle Times, for which we are very grateful, did a lot of heavy lifting, writing 17 editorials and writing things such as this, and I quote, "The business of breeding elephants, of displaying them, and exploiting them as revenue drivers should end," end quote. We also know that attitudes are changing because we commissioned 2 surveys conducted by respected national polling companies. The first one was done in 2013 while the elephants were still in Seattle, but actually before the peak of our campaign. The second one was done in 2017 after the elephants had left Seattle. The key findings about attitudes are very encouraging and would probably be even higher if we did a survey today. Here are 5 key findings. 85% of respondents to our survey the way they think about keeping wild animals in captivity. Not bad. 88% of respondents have not changed to whom they donate money or change the products they buy, such as products containing palm oil, after going to the elephant exhibit at Woodland Park Zoo. 62% of respondents supported retiring the elephants to a sanctuary. 47%, almost half, felt very strongly about it. Now get this, only 10% of respondents said no to retiring our elephants to sanctuary. 66% of respondents believe that children can learn about elephants and their conservation through exhibits that do not contain live elephants. And the last one, 66% of respondents believe that Woodland Park Zoo should stop breeding chai. Now, I have another finding for you that you will find incredible, but it doesn't surprise us, and it validates what we believed all along. Get this, only 1% of respondents said that they learned about wild animals by going to the zoo, even though the zoo was offered as a choice. So there you have it. People are learning about wild animals from places like animal shows on TV, documentaries, and the internet. So they know how animals act in the wild. And they know that seeing a despondent elephant like Chendra pacing in circles, or Shine or Rose 2 repeatedly walking back and forth, they know that this is unnatural and they find it painfully troubling. Some people leave the zoo and never want to return. Now let's turn to the captivity industry's own survey. The World Association of Zoos and Aquariums conducted a study in 2014. It found actions people would take to protect wild animals and to protect wild habitat actually decreased after a visit to the zoo. So there you have it again. The captivity industry has debunked their own time-worn claim that seeing a wild animal in a zoo results in people caring or taking action to advance conservation. It does not. Another thing we know is that keeping zoo cages filled with elephants is unsustainable. The Seattle Times did an in-depth study of elephant records from AZA zoos and found, and I quote, "For every elephant born, 2 die." At that rate, this 288 elephants inside of 78 U.S. zoos could be demographically extinct within the next 50 years because there'll be too few fertile females to breed. So, what's the answer? Technology. Technology is a humane way to champion education and conservation of wildlife. Virtual connection allows us to immerse ourselves in the lives of wild animals. We're able to learn how they raise their young, how they outwit competitors, how they avoid their enemies, and it allows us to learn how they play their vital role in the ecosystem. Technology can open worlds utterly beyond the capability of any traditional zoo, and without any of the suffering. So, what can we do? What can you do? Never, ever give up, ever. Keep the pressure on Metro. Keep the pressure on elected officials. Remember, politicians care what the voters think, and the zoo cares what the public thinks, because that's where a lot of their funding comes from. So, also, keep up the pressure on social media and mainstream media to bring awareness to your elephant's suffering. So I'll end with this quote from Gandhi. "First, they ignore you. Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you. Then you win." I think Free the Oregon Zoo elephants is at "then they fight you." So you're well on your way to making Chendra's retirement to sanctuary a reality.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Chelsea Davis, aka Veggies Do It Better, and I am one of the organizers of today's event. The following presentation has been pre-recorded, but our speaker will be answering your questions in the comments below during the watch party. I'm so excited to be introducing our next speaker, Jonathan Balcombe. He is a sought-after international speaker who's here with us today. He's a biologist with a PhD in ethology, the study of animal behavior. Jonathan is the author of 4 popular science books on the inner lives of animals, including Pleasurable Kingdom, Second Nature, and What a Fish Knows, which is a New York Times bestseller. He's also published over 60 scientific papers and book chapters on animal behavior and animal protection. Today, he will be sharing on elephants and the animal experience.
Thanks, Chelsea. Hello, everybody. I can't see you, but hopefully you can see and hear me right now. And now I'm going to share my screen and get started. Okay, hopefully the slides are going to advance by pushing my arrows. So we're living in unprecedented times in terms of the interest, both public and scientific, in the well-being of animals. That's one of the reasons why we're having this forum. There are more and more discussions about animals and their moral standing in the world, and how that moral standing needs to change radically and be expanded. It's also a very exciting time to be an ethologist, which is somebody who studies animal behavior, as I think Chelsea just reminded you. Animals have been doing great stuff for ages, and they knew it, but we were completely oblivious. We sold them short. But anyone who's had a cat or spent time around animals knows that they're very responsive. They show not just, they show all sorts of emotions, including pleasurable ones. And I've written a couple of books on animal pleasure because it's a subject that's been quite neglected. And I think it deserves much more attention. So I'm showing I'm going to show a few slides and talk briefly about a few general phenomena about animals that relates to their awareness and their sensory world, their love of life, and their pleasure. Because that's, as I say, it's a topic that's often neglected. And then I'll finish up with a little bit more of a focus on elephants, which are the focus of this forum, I believe. So a little bit more about that last slide. You may recognize this as a warthog lying amidst a group of banded mongooses. This is a scene from the wilds of Uganda, Africa, that's played out quite often. The warthog wanders into this area, knows that the family of mongooses live there, and flops down in an invitational gesture, which is essentially to come and remove parasites from my body. And as you can see from this picture, all parties are very enthusiastic about this mutualism, which is to say a relationship that both parties benefit from. The mongooses get some salt and some little parasite treats, and the warthog gets spa treatment and parasite removal service, so everybody's happy. And the warthog clearly enjoys it. And we see the same kind of phenomenon carried out in all walks of life. Here's a Nassau grouper being petted by a trusted diver off the coast of Florida. These fish will repeatedly approach divers. They may recognize them individually, or they may just trust them. And if they get strokes, there's no food involved here, they'll come back for more because it feels good. We also see strange, hard to explain phenomena, probably play in this case. This is a phenomenon that's been recorded in the Sea of Cortez many times, which is when humpback whales will sort of breach. They stick their nose out of the water when there's a dolphin nearby, and the dolphin rides up on the nose and then slides down. So it looks almost like a little playground sliding game. A bit mysterious as to what the motivations are here, but probably play and pleasure. Play and pleasure of touch. We saw the earlier slide with the cat. This is essentially the rat equivalent, and this has been well scientifically studied. Laughter in rats. They make high-pitched ultrasonic calls in the 50 kilohertz spectrum when they're tickled on the belly like this. This is a behavior they do during play when they're young, and they will literally chase the hand to receive these tickles. They love it. And how do you tell they love it? Well, they're making these chirps, which you can hear with the bat detector. They're too high for our hearing. But also their ears tend to turn pink when they're happy and excited. And you can actually, that's something that can be actually observed. And then we have the advances of technology that allow us to see things that, as I say, animals have probably been doing this for long times, for thousands, tens of thousands, maybe millions of years, but we never knew it was happening until we decided to put camera traps out at night along well-traveled wildlife pathways. And we find here this phenomenon, which is essentially an Uber service for small African cats, in this case, genets, who jump up on the backs of these large, bigger mammals, rhinos, buffalo, and get a free service. Obviously, they have to go where the rhino or the buffalo is going, but they have a high perch. They're safer, and those big animals probably scare away little mice and other small animals that this cat can then leap off from its vantage point and pursue. So it's probably what you'd call a commensalism. There's probably no particular benefit or detriment to the large mammal below. Maybe they like the company at night, and maybe there's an alarm signal benefit. So now I think of it, there probably are some benefits for them. But certainly the cat benefits from this relationship. We also have a lot of biases about different groups of animals, such as reptiles. We think of them as sort of taught to think of them as cold-blooded, unthinking, killing machines or machines of certain sorts. And yet close studies show that, for instance, crocodiles have tool use in this case, where at certain times of year they float sticks on their heads and then they sink down below the surface and they wait for herons to come and grab those sticks to build their nests out of. The herons these sticks become a very valuable commodity during the nesting season. And so the crocodiles lure them with these sticks, and they only do it at the time of year when the herons are nesting, and they only do it in the locations where the herons are nesting. So it's both time and location dependent. It appears to require quite a bit of cognition, quite a bit of thinking on the part of these animals. This is a still photograph from a park in France where 6 rooks were trained to drop garbage in garbage containers in exchange for a food pellet. So the motivation of getting a little treat was enough to get these birds cooperating and actually helping us. And I want to talk just briefly a little bit about virtue too, because that's another phenomenon that's widespread in animals that's often overlooked, where it's not all selfish, it's not all me, me, me. Animals will make self-sacrifices. Prairie dogs are a great example. They have a lot of enemies out there in the prairies, most notably humans. Their populations have been reduced to a tiny, tiny fraction, perhaps 1% of their historical populations because of persecution by humans. But there are hawks, eagles, wolves, foxes, black-footed ferrets, and other enemies that they need to know. They have specific alarm calls for each. And the individual who makes the alarm call is drawing attention to him or herself. So that is a self-sacrifice. It's a bit of a self-risk. Of course, they've seen the predator, so they're probably in a good position to escape it. But nevertheless, they're helping others by doing that. So it is a virtuous behavior. And we don't only see virtuous behavior on land. You can see it in the waters as well. Here we have 4 different species of rabbit fishes, and you can see 2 of them are foraging together in each picture. And one of them is plucking away at algae in the reef, which is a bit of a vulnerable position if you don't see that moray eel or grouper or some other predator coming along. And the other one is head up playing lookout. So the one playing lookout is foregoing gratification for a short period while the other gets a safe meal. Of course, they switch off. A part of the virtuous behavior is that everybody gets their chance, and after a couple of minutes, they switch roles. So both parties get food in a much safer way than if they foraged selfishly. Also wanted to put in a word for animals that we still generally don't think of as having any kind of mental or emotional experience. Maybe some of you do. I think we definitely should be open to that. Insects make up 80% of all organisms on the planet by species. They're immensely successful. They're everywhere. And not only can they be beautiful, like these blue butterflies photographed, I think, in Romania or Bulgaria, perhaps. Science is showing that they also do some pretty amazing stuff. I've just finished writing a book on insects that's coming out later this year, focusing on flies, an enormously successful group of insects. And there is a chapter in there on the question of awareness and sentience in insects, and flies in particular, that I think will definitely get people scratching their heads and wondering, hey, maybe I underestimated these creatures. All right, let's turn to elephants. Before I continue, I just need to see how much time is on my watch, because Chelsea, you'll let me know when I'm running low on time, will you? Because I just can't seem to get my phone to tell me in a convenient manner while I try and do this presentation. What are we, about 8 or 10 minutes in?
That
Okay.
sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. Hold up your hand when it's 15 or something. I should be on time.
Okay.
So just a few things about elephants. One hopes that nobody needs convincing today that these creatures are these long-lived, highly social creatures, are emotional, cognitive, that they have minds, they have big brains, they have long lives. There's every reason to expect and to believe that they have fully rich, emotional, thinking, social lives. But I just want to mention a few studies that kind of speak to that, because we continue to treat animals as if they don't have those phenomena. It's as if they don't have emotions and thinking the way we treat them so abominably. We've done a terrible job of building good relationships with animals in our recent past. We need to fix that. So here's elephants moving from one place to another. They spend a lot of time walking. They know where the water, where a source of water is 35 miles away, or maybe only 5 miles away. They know where a fruiting tree is ready to get fruit from. So they use that intelligence, that spatial memory, and that knowledge to find their way around and make their living. It's not easy feeding that huge body every day. They have to eat huge amounts of food and get a lot of water. Well, do they know who's who, and where they are? One way to study that, an ingenious way, the scientists actually collected fresh urine from elephants, and some of the urine they collected from elephants in front, but some of the urine they collect from elephants walking several hundred meters behind, and they surreptitiously dropped that fresh urine in front of them, and they found that when elephants encountered urine that was from an elephant who was walking behind them, they acted puzzled. It didn't make sense. They stopped, they looked around, they twisted their trunks. It doesn't make sense to find fresh urine from an individual from Aunt Martha who's walking several hundred meters behind you. So it's a way to show that they actually track, and they're aware, they're keeping mental tabs on where other elephants are. It's estimated they can they're keeping track of 40 or more elephants at any one time. Another study found that elephants recognize the voices and the language, whether they recognize the language by word. I'm not suggesting that, maybe they could, but they can tell when they're hearing the voices of Maasai warriors versus other more benign local peoples. Maasai warriors carry spears, and they have been known to harm elephants. The elephants know the difference, and if you play back recordings of Maasai voices, they run away and they look back nervously, whereas if they hear recordings of local tribesmen who are not a threat to them, they don't react that way. So they're discriminating fine acoustic cues. I had the good fortune of going to Kenya in 2012, visited the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. They do a fantastic job of rehabilitating orphaned elephants, and they've had a great success in releasing many back into the wild. I noticed that we arrived near feeding time, and they feed them these two bottles of milk formula every morning, and these young elephants are very keen to get it, and they're very excited. And I noticed that after the first bottle, the elephants all trunk going, mouth going, like, let's get the next one, let's get that second one. But they only ever get two, and the behavior after the second one was totally different. It was like, well, I've had my two, that's it, no need to wait for the next one, I won't be getting it. So I know it's not that impressive that an elephant can count to two, but just that kind of awareness and knowing the ropes of the activity was kind of impressive and really neat to watch. And such personalities these creatures have. And here's the dark side. This is so many young elephants to get orphaned because of poachers and people shooting them. And this young individual was severely depressed. A lot of them don't recover from their emotional wounds, and they cease to thrive, and they simply shrivel up and die. This one is feeding from a blanket. The blanket is used there so that the young elephant doesn't know that it's not actually a real elephant behind the blanket. And there's he or she going to sleep. I don't know if this one survived, but you can sponsor them and adopt them. And I want to mention Gay Bradshaw, one of her books I'm reading right now, Carnivore Minds, wonderful book about carnivores. But she also drew a lot of attention to elephants when she did studies of how they're traumatized by this persecution that they've had at the hands of humans. And they often have suffered from PTSD, clinically demonstrated cases of post-traumatic stress disorder. And some of the manifestations of that one finds, including violence, is an emotional instability that we know from human PTSD sufferers is also manifested in elephants. Just wanted to show this slide from a photo I took in India over 30 years ago. Just symbolizes the kind of relationship we've had with elephants and with other animals, which is to say us on top and them on the bottom. And you can see this elephant has a huge chain from the head, dragging it along the ground. This elephant would much rather be out there in the woods with his or her fellow elephants, not being at the mercy and at the direction of some human. So that's the kind of relationship we built, and it's the kind of relationship we need to move beyond. It's all about sentience, the capacity to feel pains, pleasures, emotions, have good days, bad days. It's the life of a complex animal like us and like them. And I believe sentience is the bedrock of ethics. The reason we have moral systems is because others' lives matter to them. Why do they matter? Because, as I say, we can have good days and bad days. Good things can happen to us and bad things. So if you have those qualities, which these other animals I've been talking about clearly have, they are of moral relevance, and we need to take that into consideration in our behavior and in our laws. And I have to mention what we eat, because that's where the rubber meets the road on the welfare of animals in the world and the welfare of the future. And we're now dealing with a pandemic, which is very much connected with this bad habit we have of eating other animals when we don't need to. And we're seeing some very exciting changes happening there now. May they continue, maybe they expand very fast. I don't need to explain this picture. You can explain it to yourself. So I hope that's a little bit enlightening to some of you, illuminating. Just in closing, this picture speaks to the relationship that we can and need to have with other animals. It's one where we sort of, it's almost like karma. What's good to them is good for us. If we do well by them, it will come back and be better for us, because it's sort of a connectivity there. A world where we're kind to animals is one where we'll be kind to each other, because we, after all, are also animals. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Yeah, if you want to
stop share,
end the slideshow, please.
Okay.
And oh my gosh. And so thank you so much, Jonathan. We have Carol Buckley coming up next.
Okay.
And sorry. So Carol Buckley is the founder and CEO of Elephant Aid International. Carol is an internationally recognized expert on rescuing and rehabilitating captive elephants. She's coming to us live from Elephant Refuge, North America, which is her sprawling 850-acre sanctuary in Georgia. So please tune in, listen, learn, and then take part in the Q&A, which will be following her video. And do not forget, please call Metro and the zoo and ask them to finally retire Chendra and send her home. She needs to be in a sanctuary, as we all know. And please do also take part in our challenge that we're doing. We're doing a video and a photo challenge, and we have some great prizes involved. And it's also just a great way to get this out there to the public, because we're all here, and we know that she deserves a better home, but there's a lot of people out there that don't even know that this is happening. So thank you so much, and thank you again, Jonathan, and we will see you with Carol Buckley.
Here we are in Attapogus, Georgia, at Elephant Refuge, North America. This 850-acre piece of paradise is going to be home to 7 to 10 elephants that will come from zoos and circuses. They will retire here for the remainder of their life. This is a beautiful habitat for them. Perfect weather, great climate, great topography, with pastures, dense trees, water, creeks, streams, and it's a beautiful habitat for elephants. Good morning. We're at Elephant Refuge, North America. We're going to give you a tour of the newly completed elephant barn. And we're going to come in from the back. When elephants arrive, this will be their view of the barn. So there's 3 access doors that come into 3 separate but interconnected stalls. These stalls are 30 by 30 and they are 4-foot deep sand. We have concrete here as you enter into the barn, but once the elephants are inside the barn, they will be standing on sand, 4-foot deep sand. So they will have an opportunity to not have to suffer from the results of standing on a naturally hard surface such as concrete. The sand is yielding, it absorbs moisture, it can be moved around by the elephant and made into comfortable sleeping spots. It's a great dusting material that they can throw on their back and then use as sandpaper when they rub on the walls. But here you see, here are the dividers. They are interconnected, which means there's a gate that can open or close in between each stall. And then, of course, there is a door. And in the case of the 2 end stalls, there are 2 doors that lead out. So let's go over here into the keeper area. So over here on this wall is the panel with all the electrical, everything to operate the gates. And what just went in yesterday was this box with all the mechanics in it that will operate our streaming video. Streaming video camera is going in today. We're so excited. This is the restraint chute. This is a feature that you should or can install in your barn, and it just gives you more flexibility, especially if you're having a visiting veterinarian come. The elephant can easily be conditioned to voluntarily go into that stall and give the visiting veterinarian access. Over here, I'll show you how simple it is to open and close the gates and the doors. There's a switch on the keeper wall. You just turn the switch, close your door, ding, it locks by itself. It's fabulous. And here, we're going to open it for you. So it's easy and safe. Now you notice that in this barn it's very bright. This is, there are no lights on. This is how it is. And that's because we've got all these skylights. It's great. We also have lighting, so in the event we come in the evening or at nighttime and we want to see what's going on in here, we can just flip the switch and there it is, the lights are on. But of course today, midday, you don't need it. The way this barn is heated is with infrared heaters. We do not use floor heat. We do not use forced air. Forced air heat dries the elephant's skin. We use infrared, and the infrared gives the elephants the choice. How warm they want to be and what part of their body they want to warm. That is done with the infrared heater, which has a 30-foot range. So it shoots down into the stall. The elephant can move around in the stall and decide how warm they want to be. Right here in the center is the training wall or the foot trimming wall. This is a protected contact feature so that new elephants can be taught behaviors where they can respond to the caregivers, and it's done voluntarily. And so this wall is designed so that if an elephant were to feel insecure and feel that they wanted to lash out with their trunk, when they did throw their trunk forward, it would not come through the pipe because you've got those angled pipe which would stop the trunk's movement. What happens with elephants is they start to feel very safe behind this wall because they know no one can hurt them. They know they don't have to participate. They can walk away if they want. And if they walk away, they very definitely can walk out the door. Because during any training, this door will be open. This is important for us because we want the elephants to have true autonomy, and true autonomy is to make their own choices. So interconnected, all 3, and let's see what this looks like to close this gate. again. So that's the gate that divides the two stalls. So easily done for the caregivers. The caregiver area is concrete and does have a drain in the center, which makes it easy to clean. The ventilation is up on either end. We preferred to utilize a system where the air is pulled out from two ends instead of air being pulled from one end through the barn to the other, because that does potentially bring contaminated soil through. And so let's do this one last thing. Let's open this door. All right, so this stall actually has access to its own little yard, a 7-acre yard. So if an elephant is new and insecure about the big yard, she can then be allowed out into this area. Has its own pond, trees, and of course, pasture. And then when she's comfortable enough and she feels has developed the confidence to be in a bigger space, then she's going out here in the 100-acre area. And then from there, she would be released into the additional 750. Here we are at Elephant Refuge North America with our barn completely done. We're so happy, and thank you for all your support that made this happen.
My name is Carol Buckley. I'm with Elephant Aid International, and our project in the U.S. is Elephant Refuge North America. Now, we have many projects around the world. Mostly we focus in Asia, but a few years ago we decided that it was time to create the next generation of elephant sanctuary. And this was something that we put a lot of thought into, because the question that we should all be asking ourselves is, why? Okay, why a sanctuary? Why a refuge for captive held elephants? And there are lots of reasons, but the three main reasons are, well, more than three, is philosophy of management, space, social freedom, and autonomy. So in my opinion, this is why refuge is a requirement for captive held elephants. They're not able to go back to the wild. This is what we have to do for them, is create a place that mimics their natural life. And of course, to mimic their natural life, we depend on the researchers in the wild. So we depend on researchers like Cynthia Moss in Africa and you know, all of the researchers in Asia that are collecting the data that are telling us how do elephants live in the wild. Because for me, if I'm going to create a place where captive held elephants have to live, I want it to be as close as possible to the wild. So we call our place a refuge, and we do it on purpose. Because, okay, now, all right, here I am again. I've moved because, and I'm going to move again. I've moved because our Wi-Fi here out in the middle of nowhere at Apolgus, Georgia is pretty poor. So I might just keep dropping off and going on again. But anyway, so let's see if I can pick up talking about why sanctuary. Why is there a need for a refuge? Why is there a need for a sanctuary? And a lot of us believe that we know those answers. And now what we're going to do with our next generation of elephant refuge is we're going to take everything that we've learned collectively, everything all of us have learned about what is the best way for captive held elephants to live. And we're going to take that and we're going to improve it. We're going to take everything that worked, we're going to apply that. The things that didn't work, we're getting rid of that. And then we're going to add in a lot of innovative and new ideas. And the number one most important thing that was considered when we began to look for land was where. Because as we have all learned, climate is everything for elephants, because they need to be outside to remain healthy. They have to be outside the majority of their lives, not come in at 5 o'clock at night, stay in till 8 in the morning. It's very difficult for them to remain healthy when they are continually confined into a small space with very hard surfaces to stand or sleep on. So the goal is to get to a climate where it is warm enough that they can stay out all night. So we found that in Georgia. Okay, it's fabulous. They'll be able to be outside all the time. So you saw the video of the land. It is really perfect for elephants. And when I say perfect, this is what it is. It is, the topography is rolling, okay? No sound. Have I lost you guys again? Somebody make a comment and tell me if you can hear me or not. Okay. I'm just going to keep talking. So, and then I lost my train of thought. So the topography, okay, the topography is really appropriate for this species. We all know that elephants are migratory by nature, but what does that mean? What that means is they're continually moving and walking through a diverse habitat of pastures, wooded areas, dense forest, the topography up and down, not flat land. This isn't cattle. You're not grazing cattle. You're actually, it has to be interesting, so they want to keep moving. There needs to be vegetation that they want to eat, that is tasty to them, that is appropriate and nutritious for them, and a variety so that they keep wanting to move to get that bamboo over there on the other side of the next hill. And this land gives us all of that. And the lay of the land is such that as they're grazing through pastures and they start to get warm because they're out in the sun, here's a grove of trees, they get into the trees, they cool down a little bit, they go in further, they're in the wooded area, the dense wooded area, and there's a creek running through. We have 10 spring heads going through the property. 10 spring heads. So there is always access to water. So it's sand bottom, which keeps that, it's spring fed. So the elephants always have a chance to get into the woods, have a drink, cool down. And what they will do, since they are migratory, since they are eating 20 hours out of every day, they will keep moving, they will keep browsing, they will keep grazing, and they'll end up on the other side, and there's another pasture. They graze through that pasture back into the wooded area, and that will keep them moving. And that's what you want, because it's really a nightmare for a caregiver to try and keep an elephant active if the habitat doesn't do it. If the habitat is not interesting enough, or the elephants are not given access to the habitat, or if the caregivers cannot go into the habitat to service the elephants, therefore the elephants come back to the barn, then it's a nightmare and you have to do behavioral enrichment. And unfortunately, or fortunately, people have realized that behavioral enrichment is very, very important. Indeed it is. But if you need behavioral enrichment, well, it means that there's something wrong with your environment, because the elephants should derive behavioral enrichment from their environment. So you saw the video, both videos. You saw the video of the barn. That was self-explanatory. It's unfortunate that we have to put all that money into a barn, since the elephants are going to spend just a matter of days there, nights there in a year, maybe 4 or 5 nights they'll be in there. But it's a really important aspect of introduction for a new elephant, because you don't want to shock her system. You want to bring her into a situation that is somewhat familiar, so that you can do the rehabilitation and rehab her out into the big outdoors when she finally gets a sense of who she is as an elephant. So that is the purpose of a barn. So I know I'm here to tell you about who we are, what we have to offer. We're very, very pleased to be able to offer a home for any elephant. And as you all know, it's a difficult process to get an elephant released from any of these institutions. And I have found that it doesn't work very well if we blame them or if we act like we know more. Because we don't know more We just know that we don't want the elephants there. So my approach is to always take what I know and take what the elephants have taught me and try to engage with others about what I think that I know about elephants, and can we do better by them? And if we can do better by them, let's do it. And you also know that if there is an elephant that would not benefit, truly and honestly, not benefit from the move, I'll be the first to say so. Hanako in Japan was an elephant in hospice care and should never have been moved, and she wasn't. But the idea was people believed that if she moved to a sanctuary, she'd be better off. And the truth is, when I went to meet her, she was already in hospice care. She was a grand old lady. She was deep in her own loss of memory and mind, and it would have been very traumatic for her to be moved. And after I saw her and made my evaluation, of course, she died within a month or two after that. She was on her way out. So of course, most elephants will benefit from the change as long as the philosophy is appropriate for the species. Moving them and really consciously and effectively rehabbing them, of course, changes their life. So I don't know that I need to talk really any more about our facilities or our philosophy. So I'm going to look down the list here and see if we have, what questions we have. All right, so everybody, I love this. Everybody's saying, hear you loud and clear. We hear you loud and clear. Well, that's good. Okay, so here's a question. It says, what challenges do you face rehabilitating captive elephants from zoos and circuses? Okay, so rehabilitating elephants from any captive environment, okay, zoo, circus, somebody's backyard, in Asia, elephants used in the industry for rides. Rehabilitating an elephant is actually a fairly easy process if you know what you're doing and you have the facilities to facilitate it. So, first off, you need the land, the habitat that makes an elephant feel comfortable. So, something that looks like and acts like and feels like where they would naturally live. So once you have the habitat, the elephant will naturally derive some comfort from the familiarity, even though maybe they never lived there from the time they were 6 months old. There's the cell memory and that they'll remember it. Then you have to make sure that any elephant that this new elephant is going to be exposed to does not cause a threat. That there's no fear, no concern. So the elephant needs to feel incredibly safe, not only with the habitat or with the elephants, but with the caregivers. And I have learned that the best of intentions is not enough in rehabbing an elephant. The best of intentions is just that. It's the best of intentions. So a skilled rehabber. And a skilled rehabber is a person who knows elephants inside that elephant, can read an elephant, not know what they think, not say, oh, that's what they're saying, but to feel them, to feel their comfort zone. When they start to get stressed, know what it is they're getting stressed about. Let me give an example. Sissy. Oh my gosh, what a heart. For those of you who don't know who Sissy is, Sissy was brought in very young to a very small zoo in Texas. She was swept out of her enclosure by a 40-year flood. Got stuck between two trees underwater for 3 days. Seriously traumatized. Brought back to that same enclosure, forced back into that same barn that she was pulled out of. And the next time it rained, a keeper died because she was so afraid. She was then sent to another zoo, Houston Zoo, and they took good care of her. They tried really hard to do right by her, but she was traumatized and she didn't trust. And there was some, I won't say brain damage, but there was some residue from that injury. She was slower to respond. She always responded, but she was slower, like slower to hear it and then understand what you were saying. And then her eyes would light up and she would just respond. So she went from Houston then to El Paso. And at El Paso, they were a very strict, very traditional program. And when she arrived, they beat her, and it was on video. So they beat her. The zoo management didn't find out about it right away. It was a couple years later, zoo management found out about it. There was a big uproar in the city, and she was moved to us. She comes to us insecure, not aggressive, but had a reputation of aggression because she had killed someone, and just afraid of everything. It took a good 3 months of rehab attention to get her to be comfortable to come out of the barn a couple 100 feet and then lie down. Just natural, normal things that an elephant would do. But she was afraid of everything. So we knew that she needed to develop a relationship with the other elephants, which they were all very kind to her, but she also needed to trust all of us caregivers. So we had to have a relationship with her too. And of course, I was seriously drawn to her. She's an amazing individual, really wanted to please. So what I'm getting at is when she had her breakthrough was when we were walking through the habitat. This took months and months to get her go another 100 foot and another 100 foot and another 100 foot. And we get to the creek. And there's just a trickle of water in this creek. There's like no water in it, but she is petrified. And so I'm talking to her. And she trusts me. And I trust her. And I talk her into going through this creek. You'd think it was a river. She got herself all worked up, you know, she was kind of antsy and jumping around. You see the look on her face, I want to do this, I want to do this. And I said, you can do this, you can do this. And she made the breakthrough. She trusted, and she went across that creek. That was it. From that time forward, her progress, her rehabilitation just took off because she found some faith in herself. She was comfortable and trusted her environment. She trusted the people and the elephants that she was with. And those of us who were rehabbing her knew what we were doing so that every step was one step forward and no steps back. Because when you do one step forward and 2 steps back, you may not get another step forward. So it is on one hand easy to rehab if you have the facilities and you have the skill. And it's mandatory. It's mandatory for the health and well-being of an elephant to be rehabbed. I don't believe in taking an elephant from one situation, putting her into another situation that is marginally better, but it's still not. It's still a pseudo zoo. Then don't move her at all in the first place. Do better by her. So let's see. I hope that answered your question. Let's see. Here's another one. What behavioral differences do you see between zoo elephants and circus elephants when they first arrive? And it's a great question because there is a huge difference. Okay? Circus elephants come in and they're like, hey, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, get out of the way. Open the door. I want to go out into the habitat. Let's go. And why do you think that is? Because they have more life experience. They've been in and out of buildings, in and out of trailers, met all kinds of different elephants, met all different kinds of people, heard the noise, been here, been there. I'm not saying none of it was stressful. I'm saying that they know what it is. There's nothing to be afraid of. So it's easier for them to adapt when they come into this new environment because they're used to coming into many different environments. Zoo elephants, on the other hand, a lot of them, and I won't say all because it's not all of them, but most of them are slower to trust. They know the barn, they go in the barn. Some of them don't want to leave the barn because when they look outside, it's way too big. What is that big old thing out there? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? This is too scary. So what we learned early on was to bring in another elephant that we thought would be a good match for the new one. Let them become friends. And that's what would happen. So they would become friends, and that can be instantaneous. In our experience, it's instantaneous. It's like we get out of the way and let them do their thing, and they're like, again, rural Georgia, the Wi-Fi is awful. So, but we don't mind because the land is fantastic. So let's talk. I was looking for more questions here, and I think because I had to end the video and start again, I think I lost all my questions. So if you have a question, please put it up there. Let's talk about live vegetation and how important that is for elephants. And of course, a habitat, that's one of the reasons for a habitat is that you have live vegetation for the elephants. And one of the great things here is we have bamboo, natural growing bamboo here, all over the place. It's great. So elephants are constant eaters. They select, collect, and eat their food 20 hours out of the day. This is their job. This is what they do. This is why they don't migrate to eat. They eat and then migrate. So if you put food in front of them, yes, the chances are they're not going to go anywhere. But if you give them a big habitat and you put food in front of them, they're asking about elephants moving long distances, and is that bad? You know, is it hard for them? We've moved elephants that it took 3 and 4 days. Of course, it's not a pleasant thing, but they don't get stressed out the way that some people might think. Okay, they just don't get stressed. These are highly intelligent, incredibly evolved. And my goal is always to keep them as comfortable as possible. So that's why I always do chain free in their trailers. They're not chained in there. And I always like to bring their caregivers, people that they know. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, why do you bring those people? Because the elephant has a relationship with them. Now, if it's an abusive person, of course you wouldn't bring them with the elephant. But in most cases, we always encourage the keeper, you know, or the trainer to come with. It was a better transition for the elephant. So let's see, what other questions do we have? Oh, so someone is asking, one question I saw was, what's your stance on elephant breeding in sanctuary? Well, my position is that elephants shouldn't have to live in captivity in the first place. And I surely would not want to be responsible for bringing a baby into this world that had to live another 70 or 80 years in captivity. I don't even care if it's in a sanctuary setting. It's not the wild. And I couldn't live with myself if I was responsible for that. So sanctuaries, as far as the definition, is sanctuaries don't do breeding. And that's one of the reasons why we don't want to add to the population, you know, we don't want to add to the population in captivity. So we don't believe in breeding. Let's see. Anybody else have any other questions? And because I timed out so often, I don't know what I told you or what you heard or what you didn't hear. But as far as the barn goes, the barn is really a place that the elephant comes to that feels familiar to the elephant, so that the transition is gradual and comfortable. You just really want to keep it as smooth and easy for the elephant as possible, even though, as I say, they just surprise us. They so surprise us with how evolved they are and their ability to transition, you know, without an issue. And the main thing is space, compatible others, and autonomy. You give elephants the right to make all of their decisions, and I mean all of their decisions, and you're going to see an elephant can recover from anything. You make sure that they're surrounded, or whoever is around them is compatible, be that other elephants, people, or dogs, whoever they choose to have in their life, compatible, respectful, and then give them a lot of space to learn what it means to be an elephant. Because once they get into it, it's pretty amazing, because it all comes very natural to them. Of course it comes natural to them. They're an elephant, you know. So as long as we give them this a safe space to be an elephant in. So do we have any other questions? Oh, yeah, we do. Here we go. Oh, so this person again wants to know about breeding and is saying, I got to get out of the sun here, and is saying, no, I don't mean people breeding. I mean, I don't mean human supervised breeding, but natural mating. Is that prevented? Well, since the position is that we don't want to be responsible for creating baby elephants, okay, then we wouldn't want to be responsible for allowing any to breed. So in my position, I don't bring in males. And so if you don't bring in males, then you don't have the issue. Okay, so you don't have the challenge, you don't have the problem. So at FOZE, you'd have to talk to them on how they do what they do, but I'm sure that I feel like they're in the same mindset that they don't want to be responsible for babies being born. So now let's see. I hope that answers your question. And here's another one, stance on natural breeding. How many elephants? And next question is, how many elephants can your sanctuary hold? And early on, when I think I wasn't on, I was just talking to myself. I was saying that, you know, we've looked at how to better do what we do. So how to create a better refuge, how to provide for the elephants in an even better way than already is being done. And that is to recognize their culture, their natural culture. And with Asian elephants, their families are anywhere from 3 members to 10. So we're saying that we're going to start with a group of elephants, maybe 7 to 10 maximum, most likely 7, and see how they bond and if they actually become functional like a family. And then there's nothing saying that you couldn't then divide off the 850 acres when you see the migratory path of a group. And if they don't use the whole 850 acres, then you could section it off and start a new family. So, but in the beginning, we're looking at 7. Okay, and then next question says, how long does it take for an elephant to heal from captivity-caused conditions such as stereotypic behavior? Stereotypic behavior is, of course, the indicator of stress. And it is the coping mechanism that the elephant uses to deal with stress. And it becomes a habit. So even in a healthy situation with autonomy, compatible others, freedom to make their own decisions and lots of space, those elephants, if they choose, when their choice is lesser than better, meaning, if it's cold, it's wintertime and it's cold, and their options are to stay outside and be cold or go in the barn, and it's still their choice, the choice is still lesser. So when they get in the barn, they will revert to that stereotypic behavior because it is a pattern and it's a coping mechanism. So even if they have a choice and they choose to come in, the reason they're coming in is because it's more comfortable inside, temperature-wise, than it is outside, which is why we have to make sure that we create our sanctuaries in places that have good climate and proper topography and vegetation for elephants. Okay, let's see, what's the next one? Okay, so Sam asks, are bulls and cows not kept separate at sanctuary? You know, each sanctuary is individually run. My sanctuary, I didn't even accept male elephants. And I believe at FOZE they are. I don't know, I can't speak for other places, but I think at FOZE they also keep them separate. So, and it's, you know, each place has to make that decision for themselves. And another person says accredited sanctuaries do not breed elephants, and that's the position that they take, is to not breed elephants. And in fact, in most sanctuaries, They don't breed any of the animals, because the whole purpose of a sanctuary, in the beginning, sanctuaries were designed because there was a need for the animals in the worst situation needed to get out of there. So they needed to save space for the needy animals. Okay. So now, even though there maybe is a little extra space, we don't want to create elephants to fill that space. We want to make sure that we're being morally and ethically sound and not creating more elephants for captivity, in captivity. Okay, what is one of the most memorable encounters you had with an elephant? I tell you, I'm so blessed. I am so blessed. I have had the most amazing experiences with elephants. They just open their heart and just pull you right in. And because I was in a situation where I was physically with them, it was incredible. There's something with all of them. One time when Deli was released from quarantine, I was overprotective of her. You know, she was our granny, our old granny. And when we released her out of quarantine, she took out into the habitat right away. I mean, she was gone. She was just like, she was going. And so I said, hey guys, I'll see you later. I'm going to go join Deli and just be with her and make sure everything's cool. So I go out there and it's going to be dark. And so I just camped out. And in the morning, it was like a gathering of the ladies. I wake up and they're all just standing around looking like, when is she going to wake up? And I got up and that was it. And Deli